Good morning. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. Good morning. So today we have Mindfull We. Looking very interesting. So is anyone new here today? You are. Please introduce yourself.
I'm
Very good. Great. Welcome. Anyone else new? Yes.
I'm Jewish. Paul P. Robinson, living here. Leadership coach, used to be a psychologist.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm Jim Sears. Myself and Ian Kuyasha are co-organizers of this group. And if you see any interesting companies that you think should be presented at 1 Million Cups, please let one of us know or take them to 1millioncups.com to sign up. So, on your presentation, what's the design of your presentation?
This is donor-based.
Cool. What kind of feedback do you want from our audience?
Specific to our business model, refining it for long-term financial sustainability. And I'll kind of go into a little bit at the end, but that's the gist of it.
All right. Well, carry on.
A patient by the name of Jane had come to the clinic to get her 1-year-old checked out. Turns out she was also struggling with severe stress, anxiety, and showed several depressive symptoms stemming from a recent separation from her husband, taking care of the 3 children, and also being the sole breadwinner for her family, notwithstanding her mother and her sister. On top of that, she recently lost her job. The night before she came to the health center, she had made the decision to take her own life. She had cooked a local Ugandan dish and had planned to purchase rat poison to mix with the food to give her child to a nearby friend after the checkup. After speaking with one of our health workers, she was able to better understand her diagnosis, get a little bit more knowledge, in particular strategies to kind of tend with her stress and her unwellness, and most importantly, how to manage her suicidal ideation. Unfortunately, and as a result of our help, we essentially prevented her from completing the act of suicide and leaving a parentless family. So my name is Pavel Repo, and I run Mindfull We. In short, we provide people what they need to recover from common mental disorders via a range of simple to complex treatments in a step-by-step fashion. So in simple terms, we recruit, we train, and then we employ local community members, individuals who actually don't have any experience, to provide basic psychiatric support services for individuals who either have depression or anxiety. And this is currently, we might approach beyond that at the moment. Our current pilot program is actually taking place in Uganda, of all countries. And Uganda is a beautiful country at that, and yet it only boasts a meager 30 psychiatrists for a population of 43 million people. And this is not the outcast, nor is this the anomaly. This is actually quite normal in many low-resource settings. Liberia, for instance, has 1 psychiatrist for the entire country of 5 million people. In Ethiopia, a country of about 110 million people, there are only 40 psychiatrists. So our work is kind of steeped in this idea of how can we bridge the treatment gap. And the treatment gap is the number of people who are struggling with the mental illness on every single light of day to actually get the treatment that they deserve. So for relative terms, in America here, that treatment gap is about 30 or so percent. When you look at low-resource nations, that number skyrockets to about 90%. So 90% of people don't receive the treatment they deserve. We employ a particular thing called task sharing. It's a fancier word for a relatively simple idea, whereby you reallocate the few specialists who are on the ground to actually provide oversight, supervision, facilitation, and you, in essence, kind of elevate and you empower the less skilled, the lower cadre of workers to kind of be in the weeds to provide the day-to-day. Our work is also particularly focused at addressing barriers towards effective mental health services, those of which are a lack of political will, this reluctance towards decentralizing mental health services, a resistance towards integration within primary care, and kind of my previous point, with a really small number of qualified workers and subsequently a lack of supervision. So we offer what we call a collaborative step care intervention, and I really want to kind of dive deeper into those words and what they actually mean. So the collaborative piece, our caregiver team is comprised of these three individuals. So I quickly touched on the community health worker, the lay counselor. So their job is they're acting as our frontline cavalry, if you will. They're really providing the treatment and the care, but they're supported and propped up by the mental health specialists and the primary care doctors. So the mental health specialist, whether it's a psychologist, whether it's a psychiatrist, they're providing critical advising and taking on the more complex cases that the lay workers can actually take on themselves. The primary care doctors are integral to this as well, since they're administering the antidepressant medication, and their real role here is to kind of spur and incite buy-in. So if a patient comes through the health center, they're going to see the doctor first. If the doctor encourages them to come to us, there's a little bit more success rate that they're going to actually kind of adhere to that course of treatment. The step care approach kind of irks on the idea that healthcare, or in our case, mental health care, is not a one-size-fits-all, rather a very kind of individualized, tiered system of support. When we invite someone to take part in our treatment package, the very first step is psychoeducation. We provide practical advice about the symptomology of depression. Many patients either don't know they're suffering with stress or having depression, so kind of laying the land of what depression is, building that rapport, building that trust, and discussing the mind-body link, how your mind, your psychology can affect your physiology. This is pretty remarkable for them as another tool, specifically in Uganda, where the spiritual realm and traditional healers are still quite prominent. Above that, we have medication, and then kind of the third tier here, the interpersonal counseling, looks particularly at current interpersonal triggers and how they're impacting that individual's capacity to navigate life. Rather, that's old expectations and kind of moving into new roles within their life. And then last but not least, the referrals and specialists. So our current program, we've screened 313 patients in Uganda. That number could have been a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, but we are doing a concurrent research study with the government of Uganda. And with that, if we were to exceed that number, we would have a protocol violation. In that moment, when I was kind of creating this proposal, I know how stringent they were. And yet, of those 313 patients, we've screened 258. So why that drop off there? Some of our criteria is exclusionary. They have to be a particular age, they need to be able to speak and hear, so forth and so on. And then patients also refuse. Whether we're too far, or they can actually provide or can't get to the place on time, they have the right to refuse and not seek care. So I'll dive in a little deeper about the first follow-up, second follow-up, and so forth. But the discharges, so the 75 patients who have actually gone through the program, those individuals have retained and remained recovered or improved for successive weeks in order to be discharged. And upon that, we've used particular interviews and diagnostic instruments. They have affirmed that those individuals are not currently struggling with the current depressive episode. But if we look strictly at the screening, so those 258 patients, so mild, moderate to severe. So most of those patients are within mild, and we definitely span the gamut there. That is indicated by a particular questionnaire. If questions allow for that, we're going to go into depth about that. But of those 258, we had about 187 come back. So immediately I want to jog your attention to the legend. So the very first thing that is missing is the severe bar. So any of those patients who are struggling with severity, a high severity depression, are no longer doing that, and the majority are actually exhibiting no depressive symptoms. So this happened within a span of about 40 or 45 minutes. And certainly these patients that have come back, whether it was within 4 weeks or 3 weeks, again, are really adherent and are engaged and interested in seeing their care improve. So from this pod, we had people that came back yet again. And of those individuals, we had 93 patients. Most of those patients, again, are not exhibiting depressive symptoms, and 2 are on the mild. So our long-term goals are pretty vast and aspirational, but they're also exciting. As we continue to kind of build out our infrastructure and support in Uganda, we intend to partner with the Ministry of Health to create more of a collaborative, sustainable endeavor. The healthcare system in Uganda is a level system, and we hope to permeate most of those levels to really make this kind of an add-on that most doctors and most health workers can have basic training to at least screen patients. In addition, we're currently creating a functional playbook that details how we did what we did from the very beginning to completion. This particular playbook will house how do you do a needs assessment, how do you plan such a program, develop it in sustainable implementation. It will have a training curriculum, it will have a facilitator's manual, and the idea is to collate all these particular tools and then to give those away to particular teams that are vetted globally so they can do a similar program and inadvertently bridge that treatment gap as well. And the last piece, this is a bit of a new kind of add-on. A lot of times when I talk about our work, people say, well, Pavel, why Uganda? Why not here? Why not in Colorado? And it's gotten to a point where I'm actually entertaining that, and I'm eager and excited to implement a similar model here locally. And the next step, at least in that journey, is to identify a niche population that really could benefit from this type of work. And as Jim had asked me, our biggest kind of question at the moment is how do we adapt or modify our business model to ensure for long-term financial sustainability? A lot of our funding comes from philanthropic capital, and yet as our efforts internationally, that resonates most with me. To encourage someone to be interested and then put their hard-earned dollars from here for efforts in Uganda has been a slog. It has been a challenge to say the least. So in part, our efforts here in the States are to kind of rally that additional support and to prove the concept here, but I also don't want to be stretched too thin. So I'd love some additional input as how we can continue our work abroad while still kind of having roots here locally. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Groundings, everyone, let us know who you are before you start talking.
Bob Goodman, Managing Director for Canopy Boulder. Interesting. I founded a digital health company in mental health space and also opioid epidemic space. So I've got a fair amount of experience on trying to get patients to do what you want them to do. Are you at all, so is this totally face-to-face? They have to come to the clinic? There's no technology involved?
No technology at the moment, although a lot of the feedback that we've also received is how can they can add this to affect more people.
Been there, done that. Really hard to get a depressed person to update on what's going on, to find out what medications they're taking, to fill out a PhD. Really hard. Even if you throw credit cards at them and shopping cards and all that stuff, really hard, almost impossible.
Okay.
So, face-to-face is important. Do you do PhD?
Yes, that's exactly.
So they come in physically, they fill out a PhD every time they come in. And then do you get some other feedback mechanism for how they're doing on their medication?
So I'll kind of back up a little bit. So in Uganda, at least in the health center that we're piloting this, there's this kind of cement awning, and patients will come there, they'll sit, and then wait for the doctor, whether it's for a blood test, whether it's to get their kit checked up on, or any kind of other physical ailments. So as they're sitting in the cement awning, we capitalize on that moment to actually give them a health education talk. In Uganda, the stigma is quite a bit more than it is here in the States. So if we were to couch you and you have a disorder, you have an illness, no one would come to us. So we try to frame it as scenarios. Perhaps you have a child and you're struggling to pay school fees. You can't even relate to that. People raise their hands. Now at that moment, those who are interested, they come up to us. We have this informed consent that they have to sign, and upon that, we escort them to a private location where our health worker will, in fact, give the PHQ-9, which is just like the screening questionnaire, but above that, we use something called a MIDI. A MIDI stands for a MIDI International Neuropsychiatric Interview, and such interviews can actually provide a diagnosis. So these two tools in tangent kind of give us more of that quantitative feedback. And then in addition to that, we take consultation details. We have the doctors who are also ensuring that people take their medications. So this is kind of composite of individuals that hopefully provides a kind of holistic care.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with you more about this offline, because I've already done it here in Colorado and some other states around the country. So yeah, I'd like to kind of give you some experience. Please, how it works and doesn't work.
Sure.
So I'm Ian. I'm a local attorney at KO. I do VC Finance and M&A. I'm lost. I don't really know what we're talking about. I don't really know what you do. I don't really know what you need from me. So my feedback is, well, there's a couple of questions. Who's the audience? Who am I supposed to be as I'm watching this pitch?
So the moment I asked for support and help with the business model, because I said we're too reliant on our philanthropic capital, and we do that within a really difficult time. With spurring and getting dollars to support our efforts.
Okay, so if the pitch is designed for someone giving feedback,
Sure.
I guess I'm kind of confused as to who that would be. So I'm going to pretend I'm a donor.
Okay.
What exactly are you guys doing? Is this like an online platform? Is this like software that ties information together? Is this people that you're putting on the ground to do like one-on-one consultations? Is it a handbook that you're making? Like, what is the actual thing that's going to be delivered? And then who is the person that you're delivering it to? Are you guys partnering with local, like you have a doctor in Uganda who needs the handbook? Or do you actually like fly someone to Uganda? Like, what's that piece? And in like 10 seconds, like not a lot, just a short answer.
So it's one-on-one consultations. Our whole team is local Ugandans who actually are not trained in mental health support service provision. We're actually a land surveyor, a journalist, and a social worker by trade. Attempting to bridge the idea that there's only 30 psychiatrists in the nation, and depression is on the ascent.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to give you money. So I'm the donor. I'm going to write you a check for $10,000.
Sure.
You're going to take that $10,000 and are you going to hire these people? Are you going to find volunteers and train them? Are you going to find volunteers and give them user credentials to a website where they can train themselves? Like that's the part of this thing.
So we'd love to expand our fleet of capable, enabled community health workers, and above that with the playbook. As we find vetted teams globally, we'd love to support them with on-ground mentorship as they implement that playbook in the local context as well.
All right.
Can I answer the question? Can I jump in? I'd like to kind of go off of what Ian's been going on here, but I want to back up a step.
Sure.
And I'm Brian Long, by the way. I've got a data gathering company here in Boulder. And the question that Ian usually asks first is, who's your customer? And I want to ask that question right now because I'm wondering why you're even talking to donors. And let me ask the question a different way. Why is the government of Uganda not your customer? Why are they not paying you?
At the moment, they're not paying us because we're small fries. Of the health budget that is allocated towards mental health, maybe that number is 3%. So for us to actually get their support, it takes an academic study to verify and vet our package. So once we complete this at the end of November, so we're not too far removed, we will go to the Ministry of Health and hopefully get their support. But it's tough, at least in Uganda, to kind of navigate that bureaucracy and get them from the get-go.
And are there other NGOs then that would fill that role? The funding role, I mean, or just, other funding sources for NGOs?
Not as many in Uganda, to be frank, and very few actually addressing mental health. I think Uganda, the HIV crisis is quite large. I think it's one of the worst in the nation. Employment is also sparse. So our kind of ethos is, can we address the mental health gap, but we're also employing individuals as well who prior to not this job.
My name is Justin Taylor. I'm a free agent. I like the concept, man. I actually want to give an analogy. So there's a company called Thirst Project and one called Charity Water. They're working in like Swaziland and countries like this. They're including borehole wells. They kind of have a dual business model where they have a U.S. facing, donor business model where they focus on a target market like students, and they empower the students, all the branding and all their advertising to do the fundraising for them. So they can go over to Swaziland, right, and run this education around sanitation and hygiene, but also implement borehole wells. And there's a bit of engineering training that comes with having to teach small villages how to manage a borehole well for the race themselves. So it kind of reminds me of your model that you really focus on that what's happening in Uganda. So my question was what happens here in the States that allows me to fund what's going to happen in countries like Uganda. And I think that Charity Water and Thirst Project would be great models to look at. They've done a great job of having U.S. traction with a cause outside of the States. My other suggestion maybe would be that, so I love, the story at the beginning was really, intense and impactful. And then you went into like this really kind of process of extending your business, but you compact the story at the beginning, and everything else had no application to the person anymore, right? So my suggestion would be to take that case study and carry that along the entire way, so that we follow the journey of this person getting to a place of mental health and clarity, and that may just make what you're doing a little bit more clear for whatever audience you're speaking to.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm Rick Brennan. I'm a local entrepreneur and investor. Two of my sons have bipolar disorder, so I'm pretty familiar with the area that you're talking about. And like Ian, I'm pretty confused as to what you're doing. I really like the start. I love anecdotal starts to a pitch, and you're a good storyteller. But there was a break for me intellectually between what I thought was going to be the problem that you were solving, which is not enough healthcare providers for mental health anywhere, even in the United States. And then you went straight into performance for a study that seemed to have nothing to do with solving that problem, and then asked for help on a business model when you didn't present the business model. So for me, there were two discontinuities, and you completely lost me. So if you want me as a donor or an investor to contribute, I believe at the beginning of the pitch you need to say, this is the problem I'm solving. I thought it was, there's a shortage of people. This is what we're doing that's different. This is how we get people involved and train them and deploy them. And then here's our business model. This is where the money comes from. This is where it's paid out to. This is how it's sustained. This is how it scales. And I got none of that. So I really, really think you're in an area that desperately needs solutions. But I don't know if everybody else was there. I didn't see a solution.
Okay.
This is Rosa, project person. I thought you did a really good job of kind of problem statement in the beginning. You have an issue with your slides with the shades of pink on blue, which is really difficult to read, and your variations of color on your scale things were very difficult to read as well. Your pie chart, so you either have to go darker with the pink, almost navy, or you've got to change the pink to a different lighter color. Sorry, that was completely technical. I think, interestingly, I agree with kind of the statements that were said here. I'm not exactly sure what you're doing, but because the problem that you exhibited at the very beginning was distinct, was there are no healthcare people out there. And then you showed a slide that showed that there was this mental health care person and then this kind of facilitator. I'm like, but that didn't increase, if there's still only one person in this whole country, that didn't solve that problem. So the problem you're identifying is one of the mental health care people, but your solution basically says we're going to take a bunch of lay people and turn them into pseudo mental health care support system, because they're not going to be professionals. Maybe a little bit of liability issue, they're probably not in Uganda. I don't think I bother with trying to launch this in the US. I really focus on what your primary goal is, and I thought of one way you might be able to go about this differently, which is there's a program called Engineers Without Borders, there's a program called Doctors Without Borders, maybe there should be a program called Mental Health Care Providers Without Borders. And you could leverage the universities and kids that are working at universities towards healthcare careers. I participated in Engineers Without Borders. A small percentage of that team will actually go on site and provide services to that community. There have been good and bad things about how that's worked. One of the challenges is that you need to make sure you understand what disruption you might be putting into that community's method for doing things. I'll give you one anecdotal example. Our team built a toilet, compostable toilet in this community, and they went back 7 months later and nobody was using it. And the reason no one was using it is because the community was spread out, and their community ethos was that if not everybody can use that toilet, no one should be able to use that toilet. So they didn't want anybody to use the toilet. So really understanding the social structure and how they support each other mental health wise today and what they would accept in that community is probably really important. But I completely agree with everything that that has been said, that there isn't, you don't have a business model. I don't see what it is, so it's really hard to ask for money if you don't show people how that money is going to get spent and how it's going to support what your program is. And I think your program is very immature and needs some more depth in what you're actually doing and how that really is in the process of what you're doing. But I don't want to beat you up too much because I do really support what your effort is, because I do think it's very important.
My name is Mike Carey. I'm a patent attorney and entrepreneur. I agree with a lot of what's said here. Like, if it were a mature system, what I would want to see is you donate this much money. This is what we do. This is the measured impact, and this is compared to what other options you have in donating. Because there are a lot of different ways, give directly, solve AIDS. There's a lot of different problems that people could donate to. And so I would want to see what's the efficacy compared to other donation options. But maybe you're not even to that stage yet. And so maybe your business model is, hey, mental health is a problem that's underserved. We need to find out whether we can effectively treat mental health. We don't know. This is an open question. Do we know or do we not? And if you don't have the convincing evidence that your business model is, we need to get this evidence to find out whether this, because this is a big problem and it's not being addressed. So our business model is to find out whether it's possible to do it. Something like that.
So I want to be practical for a second. You got a lot of abstract feedback. I want to walk through maybe what a pitch would look like that incorporated some of this. If you bear with me, would you on your slide deck give me a grid view of your deck?
Grid view?
Yes, hit escape. Yeah, the keynote or your PowerPoint. Shit, I'm gonna do PowerPoint.
Bottom right.
Yeah, I think it's something. Yeah,
Boxes.
very bottom right.
Very bottom.
No. Okay, cool. Can you zoom in and hit the little drag slider? Yeah. Okay, so here's your deck. So Mindfull We, that's a good start. Can you zoom in a little bit more so I can see the text on the second one? Okay, so mission, vision, how we do it. Get rid of this, and instead tell your story.
Okay.
And say, and I'm big on your answer to Brian illustrated for me why the fuck do you do that? You just illustrated 5 systemic reasons why it's going to be really hard to do this in Uganda. So get out of Uganda and go somewhere else where they're more interested in this problem and have more money. Go somewhere else. Don't do Uganda unless there's a reason for it, in which case your answer to Brian should be very different. But anyway, so get rid of this deck, or get rid of this slide, because there's too many words. I don't know what, I'm going to be reading this instead of listening to you. And instead have a picture of this woman who you see, and say, this is her story in X geographic region or in the world. There are 5 million people every day who go through that exact position. Give me some sense of scale or scope, and say, we want to help those people. Ah, great. Now I understand the problem, and I understand that you want to solve it. I don't yet understand how you're going to solve it, but I get many people want to kill themselves. This is a problem on this scale. We think we can solve it. Cool. Your next sentence, like task sharing, I don't know what that is. Your next sentence should then be, we helped her by doing this. And tell me what this is. Say, she was saved because a layperson who wasn't a psychiatrist was there who had our training. Ah, okay, cool. Now I kind of get what you're after. You're taking lay people in your training. Or you say, because she had access to our teleconferencing system where she could like talk with a psychiatrist in Colorado. Okay, now I have a sense. Like, tell me what are you doing? What actually is this? What is the thing that saved her? Okay, task sharing, I don't care what that is. I don't know what it is unless it's important to what your model is. So don't put something up there that's going to make me wonder, like, wait, what are we talking about? Just tell me what we're talking about.
Task sharing is the backbone of what we do. It's
Okay.
the idea of how you
But we don't know what it means. No one knows what it means except for you. And so,
But I described it to you guys, no?
So be careful in that. You want to be careful about saying something and then say, let me go deeper. Just say the first thing that's going to let me understand what it is. So what you might say is, again, maybe if you really, really want the words task sharing there and you don't think there's any more descriptive like illustration of what it is, you might put it up there and say, task sharing is at the core of our product. Other solutions, this is where you mentioned competitors that have failed, they don't do this fundamental thing, which is provide handbooks so that lay people can be directed by a healthcare professional. That's don't lose this in the jargon. Tell us what's actually happening. And then again, like get rid of the text here, unpack what's happening. This caregiver team slide, that might be more useful than the task sharing part. Like that might be the slide. You might take out the third slide and the fourth slide and jump straight to this fifth slide where you say task sharing is mental health specialists can communicate with and outsource tasks to these other people, right? Sort of explain to us what's happening. And then, again, run through the rest of this. The rest of this sort of looks like an employee orientation where you're telling people what the company is and how it works. That's not really important for me. What's important for me is then you say, if we can deliver this product that I just outlined for you on this scale, we will save or impact X number of millions of people, and to do this we need X number of dollars. Drop the mic and you're done. That's sort of the way this pitch needs to work. And I think that you should take this advice and restructure the pitch in a way that hits those points or something like it in a much shorter time frame. Drop the detail, focus on those.
I definitely appreciate the feedback on the business model, and I know it's a weak spot, absolutely, and I appreciate that.
Well, just to be clear though, it's not feedback on the business model because I don't know what your business model is. That's feedback on how do you communicate what you're talking about. The business model is a whole different thing that, at this point your business model is donations. And that's the business model that I'm understanding and taking away.
Yeah.
So that part's easy. If you actually want a real business model, that's a whole different thing that, like, this is not the form of
So all of this is way, way advanced in the United States. So I wouldn't even touch the United States. It's mostly way, way advanced in most advanced countries. So I would actually look at the other countries where they don't have infrastructure, where they don't have insurance companies. This is all being done today in Colorado by hospitals, by clinics, by companies that provide telemedicine services, apps. It's all there. It's all being done to try and fight this really serious problem of mental illness. Believe me, I've done it. I own a company that's doing this. So I would, in fact, continue with your concept of Uganda or other countries that don't have resources, but bring in telemedicine.
Okay.
I like the task sharing. I get it. You should add to your caregiver team, which is existing and limited and not capable, a picture of the member of your task sharing team. huge liability issue here. Don't even try to do it in the US. Don't even do it. Because all the agencies are crashing down on you saying, wait, you can't have these non-trained people helping mental health issues. You can't do it. It's the liability of what you do. But in other countries where they don't have regulations, bring in telemedicine. That can now connect, maybe even attempt, I'm going to go for hours on this, but I'll try not to. Try and, if there are countries where they actually do have smartphones, which are amazingly a lot, bring the technology into this solution. Because I promise you, face-to-face is going to limit you. You've only got 300 people that you reach. You need 10,000 before you move and start a business concept. And then figure out how, if it's going to be social impact, that's great. There's a whole host of social impact agencies that would love to give you money because of what you're doing in other countries that need this desperately. And the other thing is, the transition that we went through was, yes, mental health, but it's amazing how addiction follows on. So the opioid epidemic, the same thing. It's the same tools. Rather than PHQ-9 is used, but there are other things that are used, lab tests, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I like what you're doing as far as the third world nation solutions, because they have nothing. They don't have insurance, they don't have regulations. So bring technology. That would be my advice. The face-to-face concept and the cash sharing is useful, but think about technology. Telemedicine would be very useful. And you therefore can use people around the world as part of the trade.
There's a coffee here
Yeah.
that I see in the future.
At least.
So buy this kind of coffee.
No, I believe me. I founded a company called Arts Insurance because my kids had some struggling issues. Fortunately, they're fine, they work out well. They refuse to take medication because you dump this stuff on kids, you dump it on people, they hate it, and they stop taking it, and they don't get care. So you have to, believe me, I've got to start the users in this world, and I would love to help you. So we'll set up a coffee.
My name is Kim Hedberg. I'm a grant writing professor and a business consultant. There were two things that came to me when you first started your pitch. That first you said, so far we've been covered by philanthropy and we want to do something else. So are you looking to get investment? And if you are looking to get investment, were you thinking that the study that you're doing for the government may provide the evidence that you need in order to get funding from, say, a government?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
So were you looking for other types of funding? Because now you will have income. So were you thinking, oh, maybe I can get something besides donations?
So one of the ideas that we're tossing around is at least in Uganda, working with private practices or private hospitals and perhaps charging individuals for care and then using some of that cost to subsidize the care that people can't afford. That's still in its very nascent beginnings. People, at least in Uganda, alone here, often will not pay for counseling because they don't see it as an issue. At least in Uganda, the HIV care and physical ailments, that's what we'll pay for. So we have a bit of a bridge to cross there.
Okay, and your reason, notwithstanding this gentleman's very great advice about being really careful, your reason for wanting to bring it locally is?
From what I've had multiple calls this last week in particular populations, whether it's the school children, whether it's military vets or populations that are experiencing homelessness, depression, anxiety, support. Although there are more resources here, it still is often not enough. America still has pretty staggering rates of depression and suicidal ideation tendencies are quite high. So I think there isn't a lost cause for kind of adapting the labor worker model.
Yeah, I think that you two could probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there are some models that are trying to work with the people.
Sure.
Some of them
Would love that, yeah.
who have apps.
Wonderful. Go for it.
On the topic of the presentation, when I'm listening to a presentation, so my perspective as a listener, in the very first few slides, what I want to understand is who's your customer, what's that customer's problem, what's your solution, and value proposition, those four things. And at a high level, so not digging down into details at all. But what that does for me as a listener is it kind of anchors in my mind, oh, okay, I get it, I understand what he's about, and then I'm ready to receive more information. So when you kind of loop back and you say, okay, here's more detail on our solution and how it works, and now I can kind of receive that information in context, right? I always find that a good pitch seems to follow that just right at the onset, that they help me get it before we get to the details. So going back to that, understanding who your customer is, I don't think you ever got there. Okay. Jane is a beneficiary, she's not the customer, because she's not the one paying. Sure. And so we didn't really talk about who the customer is. I believe that the customer is the government of Uganda. But you wanted to talk then about Jane's problem with the mental health care issue, but we haven't yet talked about the problem of the customer, the government of Uganda. And it sounds to me like their problem is different. Their problem is how do I bring down the cost of mental health care so that we can actually provide it to our citizens. That's why that exercise of really drilling into who is the customer and what is that customer's problem will really help you as you build out the business model. And that might take you down a path, as he was talking about, maybe providing a platform of telemedicine that can help the government bring down the cost of healthcare. Stuff like that. So I don't want to bog down the group conversation with that, but that's where I think you need to be going, is back to the beginning. Who's the customer? What problem am I solving for that customer? And then going from there.
So I want to piggyback on Brian's comments, and I think real clarity on the problem would really help your pitch. And I think you do identify the problem right at the beginning, and that's that there are not enough people to handle the mental health problem, whether it's in Uganda, or in the United States. My experience here in the United States is that healthcare is expensive. It's not covered by most insurance policies, and so there is a shortage of the connection between people who should be getting mental health care and people who aren't, and the people who provide it. And so when you get to the Mindfull We slide in there, those are the professionally trained people that are there aren't enough of, right? And I believe that what you're doing is saying we can augment that small number with lay people that are trained properly, and here's a process to train them, and here's how we make these people more efficient. But I missed that, if that's what you were saying. I think if you say that clearly, and then you go to the next slide there, where you have the stepwise process, right? So screening, and then you get to the point where you get into treatment. You say, look, here at the beginning, we can make the treatment process much more efficient because we do a great job of screening. And that means that people that truly need treatment by this very scarce resource get it. And people that don't get handled earlier in the process, right? I think that's what you're saying, but you can say it really clearly. And the last thing is, I want to go back to one of Ian's comments. You are trying to change hearts and minds. You're trying to get a connection. There's not a picture in this entire presentation. Images of real people Like your Mindful We with the cartoons, it actually does the opposite thing you think it does. It disconnects me, right?
Okay.
If those were 3 real people, I would have a different visceral response. And if in here you had pictures of the people that you were treating and then the volunteers that you're using, because you're up and running, you can get all those pictures.
Right.
Your presentation would have a lot more visceral impact.
Great comments. I sort of realize that you probably will eventually, no matter how much of our figure you made, someone's going to ask you about these data points that you kind of hear, so you're going to have those back to slides. And I have a question about those from the data standpoint. You show, you did very well, but you show that there's a certain percent that's moderate to severe. And then you show how that severe thing is getting smaller, but for me there's a question that's going to come up that says, hey, but wait a minute, you didn't tell me on the first follow-up of the severe patients, what percentage was severe that came back to the first follow-up? Was that 1%? Does that mean all the severe people said, forget it, I don't care, I'm not going to get health care?
Okay. Were you looking at the data? Jeez.
Sorry.
That's a great look at it.
You know, my experience probably reflected by these 2 gentlemen here was children that had struggling issues. I don't have any of that experience, but people, particularly in the U.S., we have this stigma about getting mental health care, right? If I get mental health care, my boss finds out I'm a crazy person and so I won't be able to work anymore. And everyone in the company's going to think I'm crazy, right? That probably doesn't happen in Uganda, but there probably still is some stigma for reaching out for care. And I think it's one of the biggest barriers. It's not whether there's money, it's not whether there's professionals out there, it's the stigma in getting mental health care and saying, I need help, which is a huge problem in the U.S. where people break their legs and will go to the doctor, but if there's depressed, they will not go to the doctor because of the stigma associated with it. So I think a lot of the stuff that people are talking about here, not getting mental health care, is associated with people just not wanting good mental health care. Right? They just won't do it.
I would advise, do you have an advisor that's in the health industry?
I'm an advisory board, yes.
You do?
Yes.
They should probably be up there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to comment. And I'd also like to know more about you. Why do you care about Uganda? Why do you care about mental health? Why are you someone that should be trusted with addressing mental health in Uganda? And if you have some gaps in there, who's your team that can fill those gaps?
Because the health system in the United States is broken. It's sick. It doesn't work well. And we're putting so much money in to try and fix that. So I think, again, don't try the U.S. Do what you're doing. I think your focus is really good. Go into these third world nation countries. Try and help their problem. I think it's great because believe me, I've done this now for 6 years. This and we'll do it. And our system, we've got health doctors who would not want you to do this. They would not want you to do this in the U.S. They would fight you. There are agencies and organizations that would fight you all the time to stop you from doing what you're trying to do. Even though it makes sense and it's good, doctors have 10 minutes and that's it. After that, they go on to the next patient. They worry about insurance. Is there a CMS code? If it's terrible, it's sick, I blame the opioid epidemic on doctors and pharma. You know, a football quarterback hears a shoulder, goes in, gets pain medication, becomes addicted, can't afford it, starts getting heroin because it's $10 versus $80. It's so bad, and we're losing now 160 people a day dying from overdose, tied to mental health issues. So let's have coffee. I mean, I would love to just dump on you.
Let's have dinner.
Yeah.
Just a closing comment, since we are right up on the hour. I hope you sense that everybody in the room wants to help. And the feedback you got, some may be critical or suggestive, but hopefully in a good way. I'd like to see you come back. What I'd like to see is that you spend time having coffee and with any of us in the room, and I'd be happy to as well. Rework your deck, rethink the business model, rethink where you're going, come back, pitch again, and let's talk again. I think that'd be really cool, because I fully appreciate the magnitude of what you're working on, and want to help you figure it out. Thank you.
Okay, one last comment. So following on with the making the professionals more efficient by using lay people, I think there's a message in your data slides, your two circles there, that is dangerous the way it's presented now, but can be very powerful.
Okay.
Depression isn't something that you fix in one meeting. True depression, right? Some people could have a life problem, not have depression, right? And I think that's what your data is showing, right? Some people, you know, have a problem where they're down because there are, honest to God, life events that are...
It's called situational depression.
Yeah. The true difficult to treat thing, it doesn't go away. Depression is a lifelong problem that gets treated. So if you could tweak your data to show, look, we found the people that truly needed the professional ongoing treatment and move them to the professionals. And the people that had situational depression because there was a situation that needed to be solved, we went and found outside of these trained professionals, somebody like a banker to help them with the finances, or workers to help them with the flood wiped out. I don't know, right? That solve the situation. That would be an incredibly powerful message, right? Because I think people are going to look at this and know about depression and go, no. You don't solve depression by screening. You'll get pushback on that, I think.
On top of that, I agree that if you can solve the situation, then you take away the reason people are depressed, and that's what Engineers Without Borders are doing, right? Like we don't have water, we don't have food, I can't feed my children. If you can take away those things, then the depression won't exist.
In fact, it'd be cool to partner with those organizations to solve the situations. But solving situations, if you know about depression, doesn't solve depression. Situations and depression are decoupled. It's interesting. It's an interesting problem.
All right.